First of all, I'd like to start today by acknowledging all the people who have suffered injuries from the vaccines. When I signed up to become a senator 2.5 years ago, I signed up to protect the Australian people and particularly to make sure that we always look after the health and well-being of those people. The name of the game, with health is to make sure that everyone has a good health outcome and it's not just about the vaccine rollout and reaching targets. That's a means to an end, and the end in itself is good health for everyone. And the best people to do that are the people themselves in consultation with their doctor. And we shouldn't be having mandates imposed upon people by bureaucrats, by governments or by the media. What we have got, however, is that we have got Australians who have been injured, who did the right thing, who listened to the government that said the vaccines were safe and effective. And what we've seen is many of these victims have been scorned and ignored by the medical community. It must be particularly difficult to have an injury at the best of times, but it must be so much more worse when you go to the doctor or the hospital and you're not getting the attention that you need. That is why I'm speaking here today. And in particular, what I would like to do, and the reason why I am withholding my vote from the government, first and foremost, is to improve the indemnity scheme for those people who have been injured by the vaccine. People have been injured for months now. There have been people who have been paralysed down their right-hand side. There's people who had strokes, pulmonary embolisms, myocarditis, pericarditis, functional neurological disorders. And these people have been left helpless by a government who are more than happy to indemnify foreign pharmaceutical companies, many of whom are convicted felons for past misdemeanours, but now we are neglecting suffering Australians. I believe that these people should be compensated for every dollar they spend as a result of vaccine injuries. The threshold should not start at $5,000. They should be compensated as well for their loss of income as a result of not being able to work because of the vaccine injury. Furthermore, they need to be compensated straight away and not have to wait for months. I know one lady who was paralysed back in June. She's been bedridden most of that time. She's had a broken ankle. She has to spend $400 a month on potassium IV injections just to keep her alive. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that we've got an obligation to protect people who are going such shocking medical injuries. Furthermore, in the case of healthy people who had no underlying conditions, the onus of proof should be on the government to prove that serious injuries weren't caused by the vaccines and not the other way around. These victims should not be treated like criminals and expected to prove beyond reasonable doubt that their injury was caused by the vaccine, but rather the civil weight of evidence be used, and that is the balance of probabilities. It'd be very intimidating for someone who's sick and injured and who isn't a medical expert to go up in front of a board of lawyers and doctors who are trying to, basically talk these people out of compensation merely because the government doesn't want to do the right thing by its people. But most of all, what these people want is for their voices to be heard, for their injuries to be treated with the same level of concern as a COVID patient. These people should not be shunned and scorned by the very people who are expected to care for them. To be fair to the medical community, this is not your fault. I've heard from countless doctors, nurses and patients that backroom bureaucrats, namely AHPRA and the TGA, are threatening the medical staff with deregistration if they speak up about vaccine injuries. This needs to stop. Now, this even leads to the more even egregious act in that people who have suffered an adverse reaction from the first dose of the vaccine are now required to get a second shot. What kind of cruel, inhumane act is this? Seriously, what has happened to common decency and human compassion? Now, I note that Senator Keneally used the word violent extremism and violence a lot in her speech, but can I say the threat of having to take a second vaccine if you've already had an adverse reaction from the first vaccine, I think is violence in itself. It is intolerably cruel and it is not something I intend to walk by. Furthermore, I don't understand why it is so necessary to force these people into getting a vaccine if we are already at 84% double vaccinated for the adult population over 16. If you asked the Prime Minister and the Premiers last year if they would accept this figure as a reasonable rate of progress and would that achieve herd immunity, I'm sure they all would have said yes. So why are the Premiers still pushing vaccination so hard? I've been contacted by thousands of people who have valid medical reasons why they can't take the vaccine. Many have even been granted exemptions by their doctors as to why they can't take a second vaccine, but they are still being excluded by the Premiers from society. Now, if a doctor says that you can't take a vaccine and you're given an exemption, who are the Premiers and the government to say to people, we're going to exclude you from society? These people are already injured. Why are we shunning them? Why are we putting them down? Why are we putting the spin of the political narrative over the health and well-being of the Australian people? You know, this issue is way above politics. It is about the people, and we should not be playing political games with their health.